I'm Rachel Horgan. Join me each episode as I sit down with a guest co-host covering the latest business stories in the Seattle area. We'll read the news so you don't have to. This is The Weekly. Okay, hi everybody. So after I recorded the last episode at Reverie Ballroom, the next day I drove down to Shelton, Washington to the Ridge, which is a track because my brother, I have an older brother, older sister. I know my sister was on an episode. He's 7 years older, very into cars and driving cars. So he has a Corvette and he convinced me, so he drives around this track and he convinced me to go on what's called a hot lap, which is where you sit in on it. Not for me. I don't like the feeling of almost dying and then not, but he went slow for me, which was 137 miles an hour. But it was good to see. I saw him and my dad. The other update I have is that I'm kind of open for work right now. My current client, their event calendar kind of made some shifts and changes, and I'm just putting the word out there to the network and to the universe that if you need a contractor for your corporate event coming up in 2026, I will probably be available close to March, but send me an email, send me a DM, we can talk. And then I only have 2 more episodes of plugging my Queer Women event. That's October 18th. The notes will be in the episode show notes. I've talked about this a lot, but it's a way to connect queer women here in Seattle on October 18th at Reverie Ballroom. Ticket link will be in the show notes. Okay, that's my update. So sitting here next to me is Mari Horita, Senior Vice President of Social Impact and Civic Affairs for Seattle Kraken. Wait, there's more. Board Chair of Downtown Seattle Association, Executive Director for the One Roof Foundation. Hi, Mari.
Hi.
Tell us where we're at right now.
We are at the Kraken Community Iceplex, which is why people may hear the sounds that sound like pucks hitting against a board in the background. And we're sitting in the Kraken front office area that's above one of the rinks.
Yeah, and for those that don't know, so my understanding was just it was a practice rink. And then I came here, I see like a restaurant, there was a snack shop. It's pretty big.
Yeah, it's 169,000 square feet. It's located where the former Bond and Nordstrom were. We have 3 sheets of ice, the only 3 sheets of ice in Seattle. Our offices, as well as the player locker rooms and practice facility, a restaurant and bar, as you noticed, a Kraken store, and a little community Starbucks.
Wow. Yes, which we'll be talking about a little bit later, or I'll be talking about a little bit later. So a little background on you. I know you have these 3 incredible titles, and we're going to talk a lot more about your roles there. But you lead the team's social impact, philanthropy, and DE&I strategy for Seattle Kraken. Before joining the Kraken, she was the president and CEO of ArtsFund, and she was guiding its evolution to better serve the Puget Sound arts community, which I'm obviously passionate about. Mari has served on numerous nonprofit and civic boards, including United Way of King County, who we had on earlier in the year, the Seattle Art Museum, who we'll have later, and the UW Foundation. And then before, if you go farther back, she's actually a lawyer by training. So she's previously practiced law at some local firms. So Mari, you've had such a mix of careers. What would you say, what is the through, and maybe there's not a through line, maybe you just changed your mind and that's fine, but do you feel like there's a through line between kind of all these different shifts?
Yeah, no, it's been a bit of a windy path, definitely, but I believe there's a through line. And I think that's at each of these jobs as an attorney, as a nonprofit CEO, and now at the Kraken, they all include a mix of commercial enterprise and social impact and community and civic engagement. And each in different ways provided a platform for combining these elements for the benefit of our city and our region, and I would say for our society. And I find that type of work to be energizing and interesting, often challenging, but very rewarding.
Yeah, absolutely. And we met, one more question before we get into all the articles, but we met, or I think we'd met before, but I remember sitting next to you at a DSA event and thinking you were just so fun and funny and so talented. And we were talking about all the work that you're doing at Memorial Stadium and stuff like that. And then I went to another DSA event and up you go onto stage because you're the new board chair. And I was just so excited that you've got that position. So what can you tell listeners? What do you want to bring, change, enhance during your time as board chair? And remind me how long it's been that you've had that position.
As board
new,
chair,
right?
I just started in July.
Yeah,
it's a 2-year term.
Okay.
Assuming they don't, kick me off before that. I mean, I've long appreciated the important work that the DSA has done for our downtown and our city. And I'm a huge John Scholes fan, and he's an extraordinary leader. We're really lucky to have him. So I'm not, looking to upset the apple cart or change everything up. But we are embarking on a strategic planning process in the next few months. And I'm really excited about that. And I know we've all done strategic planning processes, and sometimes they can evoke a feeling of dread. But I'm actually looking forward to this. I think it's a great opportunity to sharpen our focus, to recommit to our purpose, and then also to engage and energize our staff and our board and key stakeholders behind our shared vision.
Yeah. Absolutely. Is there anything off the top of your head that you really want to tackle as board chair? You're just like, finally, we can bring this to the forefront or something?
Well, downtown's been moving in the right direction the past few years with a positive partnership with City Hall, the completion of the waterfront, the convention center, Climate Pledge Arena, and some other really significant projects. Also, more people living downtown now than pre-pandemic times, increasing foot traffic from office workers, thank you, Amazon, as well as visitors. But our situation is very fragile. It's precarious. We can't lose momentum. We have to keep moving forward. And DSA is it most effective. It can best advance the priority of its constituents when its constituents are actively engaged. And so I think that's something we really want to focus on. The other thing I'm looking forward to is combining the front office and the mid-ambassadors under one roof in our new space on 2nd. I think that will only strengthen an already really strong organizational culture.
Yeah, absolutely. You guys are doing great work. I know one of the things they talked about was increasing local foot traffic to people that live downtown or near downtown and making sure they're coming in and engaged. Awesome. Well, congrats and good luck on that position. So today we're going to talk about 5 different categories. So the first one, it's not an article, but I'm dying to ask Mari about an update on Memorial Stadium because she's been heavily involved. And then we'll talk about the Starbucks drama, the layoffs and the store closures. I know that happened last week, but my episode was already kind of full. So I also sometimes want to wait in case there's more news that come out. So I do feel like we had to cover that today. And then our third story is that Heritage Bank is going to acquire Kitsap Bank. Our fourth story is about Mariners leaving Root Sports. And then our last one is going to be the role of Bellevue's creative sector. All right, Mari. First one. Again, no article, so I'm not going to recap anything, but Memorial Stadium, One Roof Foundation was hugely involved, in my understanding, in getting this up off the ground. So what updates can you share with everybody on where we're at currently with the renovation?
Well, if you walked by it lately or seen it lately, you'll notice it's mainly not there anymore. There's one last section left. It's taking longer to demolish because it's, I believe, physically connected or very close to McCaw Hall. So we can't just knock it down. We have to kind of chip away at it. So we're being careful about that, obviously, but it should be completed in the next, I think, week or two. And then construction will commence soon thereafter with completion scheduled for 2027, August or September of 2027.
Okay. That's a good update. And then is there some feature that you're most excited about? I know I've seen some renderings and such.
Yeah. There's 2 things in particular I'm very excited. I'm excited about the whole thing, but 2 things in particular. One is that we're going to have a really open design, which is the exact opposite of what it is or what it was. As you recall, it was a fortress. It was a huge barrier, not only between the people inside the facility and outside of it, but between the Seattle Center and the surrounding neighborhoods. And it's going to now be really open, transparent, lower walls. So opening up a lot of great view corridors and sight lines so that you can see the fountain and the Space Needle from the other side of the stadium, and also to generate a lot more energy by sort of bringing the energy in outward and vice versa. The other thing I'm really excited about is the Memorial Wall, the refurbishing of Memorial Wall. So we knocked everything down except for the wall outside of the stadium. I'm not sure if you are familiar with.
I remember we covered this in an episode a long time ago, but refresh the memory.
It's called Memorial Stadium because it was named in honor of the 762 public school students who gave their lives during World War II. This was a 1947 building. And on this wall outside of the stadium, it has the names of all these students, and then above the names, the words, "Youth, hold high your torch of truth, justice, and tolerance, lest their sacrifice be forgotten." Poignant words then, poignant words now. But, you're like, oh, I'm not sure if I saw that. And I wasn't either because it's become so grimy and dirty that wall is nearly illegible and there's cars parked up right against it. So it has not been given the honor and place that it should have. And we are very excited to restore it to its, place of making it more visible, but also I'm just landscaping around it so it will continue to be something that people can see and honor and reflect on and remember.
Yeah. No, I love that. That's a really cool feature. We've talked about remodeling and reconstruction on my last episode and a couple other ones, and there's always something that comes up. I know you've just started the construction part, but was there any sort of hurdle from the fundraising to getting, because it's owned by the Seattle Public Schools, right?
Seattle Public School facility on the Seattle Center property. So yeah, two different
owners that you have to deal with. So what was some sort of unexpected hurdle or behind the scenes that you can share with listeners?
Yeah. So, an unexpected hurdle involving a third public agency, but as we were scoping out the construction, it was discovered there's a sewer line, from the 1800s.
No.
Running under the street. Yes. That obviously needed to be replaced, to the tune of several $million. So that was unexpected, but, obviously it had to be taken care of at some point. So we've worked that out with SPU. But yeah, it's always, like you said, there's always something. But I will say something also that was surprising, but not in a bad way, actually in a very good way, was when we did the fundraising, which we didn't have much time to do. It was a really unusual capital campaign. I mean, typically you build, an opera house around an opera or a symphony hall around a symphony. And we just had to raise money for something that we're going to knock down and then rebuild, but it wasn't like on behalf of any particular group. So
right, you couldn't say like, this is for the rain team or for the rugby team. Like you couldn't commit to what was going to be going on there.
Yeah, it is a Seattle Public School facility, but we weren't going out to, parents so much to do this because we didn't have a lot of time and we needed to raise about $30+ million. So it was pretty daunting in the beginning, like, can we do this? But we had to do it. And the reception we received was really overwhelming. I've done a lot of fundraising in my life, and in what it's probably got 30% at best response rate, even if you're really thoughtful about what you ask. And I mean, it certainly got a lot of no's on this one, like, oh, thanks, interesting, not my thing. But, we were able to raise $30 million in around 12 months from not that many people and organizations. And the grace and generosity with the donations was another thing. It wasn't like, okay, so I'm giving you this money, but what are you going to do for me? And what do I get back? And where do I see my name? It wasn't like that at all. And we don't have as much control over it as we usually would. And obviously we want to honor our donors as best we can, but it's not our facility. So just the grace that these donors showed and the appreciation for what this would be was just really humbling and inspiring in a great way.
One more question on this is that you mentioned raising the money, and why was One Roof involved? Because on the surface, you could think, okay, that there's no hockey happening at the stadium. Why did One Roof get involved?
Yeah, no, thanks for asking that. I was speaking to a group just the other day of very educated, very informed people, and I was talking about many things, including this. And when I finished, almost all of them said, I had no idea that the Kraken was involved with this. Like, why didn't you tell anyone? I'm like, oh, okay. So I guess I don't know how much people know about this project. So backing up a little bit, this is, as you mentioned, this is a 77-year-old school district facility located on the Seattle Center campus. And it's, for 30 or 40 years, it was like a beacon of youth activity and a civic center. But for the last 30 or so years, it's been a problem because, buildings only have a certain lifespan. And for so long, there's been conversations of what do we do about Memorial Stadium, but there was no money. In 2022, the school district passed a $66 million levy to redevelop Memorial Stadium, and the city committed another $35 to $40 million. And that's great, but that wasn't going to build a new stadium. And so the two of them got together a few years ago and said, we need to figure this out. And, this is not our area of expertise. So let's issue an RFP for a third-party developer to come in and help. So when we took a look at that, and as soon as we saw it, and the reason we looked at it is the Climate Pledge Arena and the Kraken are the largest tenant on Seattle Center campus. We have a vested interest in the campus. We made a commitment to the campus and the neighborhood and the resident organizations that we will do our part to support you, all of us. And so obviously we were going to look at this RFP. When we saw it, we realized because of what it was trying to do in order to retain the community focus and also to really prioritize the school district scheduling, there was no commercial upside. If we did this, was not going to be like a mini Climate Pledge Arena. Rather, this would be a donation of time and resources and money, a capital campaign. And so we thought, if we're going to do this, we have to approach this not from the lens of like a commercial developer, but really from the lens of a civic partner. And so that's when One Roof came in with our focus on youth access to play, because one of our focus areas is making sure that every kid in our area, can play sports and has a safe and clean place to gather and play. So that's how One Roof, it became the One Roof Stadium partnership with the Kraken and One Roof Foundation.
Yeah, I love it. I feel like I see this a lot with Kraken, is that they do things because it's the right thing to do and that it helps the community. And I think we're just all so kind of used to corporations doing corporation things and just doing it for money. So I really appreciate you saying that. But we're going to move on to the next article, which will probably be me saying my opinion because it's about Starbucks. And I think Starbucks is a sponsor, right, of Kraken? Yeah. So Mari loves Starbucks and she will not be saying anything bad. Just me. So my own opinion. Okay, I'm going to recap what happened first. Is that you probably already heard this. Starbucks closed the Reserve Roastery in Capitol Hill and the roastery that was at headquarters in Soto. Those came as a shock to me because they are big and cool. They show you how the coffee's made. They seem very popular. Kind of sad to see. They also are closing, I think, around 400 total stores across the U.S. And then while they're at it, they're also going to lay off 900 non-retail employees. So, of course, the people that were working in the stores, but then there's also going to be more layoffs in corporate. And as a reminder, they just did this. If this sounds familiar, they did do 1,100 layoffs in this February. Not totally uncommon for companies to lay off a bunch of people and then wait a few months and do it again. I guess we should be used to this by now, but still. Okay, so that's the story. There's Brian Niccol, the CEO. He came from Chipotle. I get the ick from him. I've said this before. He's one of the most highest paid corporate CEOs. He didn't want to leave Orange County, so Starbucks said, okay, we'll give you our private jet and you can fly around wherever you want. And then some of the other changes he's starting to make is that he's requiring Starbucks baristas to write on the cups. And this segment on Starbucks could be really long. There is a podcast called Corporate Gossip Podcast. I'm obsessed with it. And she dives deep into different CEOs and companies. She's done Tinder. She's done Meta. And she has one recently here on Starbucks. So if you want to learn more, I encourage you to go there. But there's one thing I want to pull from that episode I listened to, which was basically he's trying to force the time. When baristas were writing on cups, it was a different time. And I think what we want to do is go back to that time. It's not necessarily about writing on the cups. And in that time, there wasn't mobile ordering. The baristas probably were being treated a little bit better. And they wanted to write on the cups because they were happy. So forcing people to do it when they're crazy busy with these mobile orders and not solving all other problems frustrates me. And maybe this isn't the reality. The roastery closing, they said that they're closing stores for underperforming. I have a hard time believing that with the roasteries, but all of this is, perception is reality. So maybe this isn't the reality, but this is what I think Seattle is kind of perceiving. And there's a lot of question marks as to why all of this is happening. So I encourage you to check out that episode. Yeah, I'm not stoked on the changes here with Starbucks. I'll keep a close eye on it. Oh, the other thing is that the CTO resigned. That's the last thing I'll say here is that CTO resigned. We don't know why, but she wasn't one of the Chipotle execs that he brought with him. So that is concerning. So, Mari, anything to add there?
I don't really have any information beyond what I've read. Obviously Starbucks is a big part of so many of our everyday, including mine. I live off of more caffeine than I'd care to admit to, and spinach feta wraps. But I will say, and I think I mentioned to you when I was describing what this facility looks like, we do have a Starbucks community store, and they have an amazing partners to One Roof. And so some of the proceeds from that store actually supports our Access to Play pillar, including bringing Title I schools up here for field trips, youth-focused nonprofits, and some of our other really, we think, high-impact youth access programs. So that's what I do know. And the other things I really can't offer an informed opinion. Yeah,
no, of course. And I don't think companies are all bad or all good. And I think it's good that you brought up some of the good stuff that they are doing. But one question on this is that, so all these people are being laid off. And I just want to know, have you ever been laid off or fired?
Sort of, yes. So in I think it was 1999, in the ballroom of the Sheraton Hotel, along with 400 of my colleagues at the law firm formerly known as Bogle and Gates, we were essentially given our 2 weeks notice en masse because the firm was dissolving. I remember who spoke to us. I remember where I was. I remember that feeling, because you just don't forget those things.
Yeah. And that was probably at a time where layoffs were much more uncommon. So you were probably more blindsided by that.
Well, law firms hadn't dissolved. Law firms up to that point, I think, were the landlord's dream because law firms just didn't dissolve. So if you had a law firm, then, you could lock someone in for 100 years. And then we did. And then after us, I think Brobeck did and a couple others. But it was, it was pretty shocking. It's one of those things you remember.
Absolutely. Well, you landed on your feet, though.
Yeah, we talk about since everyone was fired.
Yeah.
Now there's this community of people from Bogle and Gates who have been all over the city. It's kind of created this awesome network of
trauma bond.
Yeah, that you didn't, there's really no other way you could actually create that other than blowing up a whole organization and then having people go to different places.
That's a positive way to look at it. Yeah, it builds community if you all went for the same thing.
Silver lining,
Silver lining, yeah. All right, well, we're going to move on to our third story, which is the Heritage Bank is going to acquire Kitsap Bank. As a reminder for people, Heritage is Olympia-based and Kitsap is Port Orchard-based. The deal is expected to close in Q1. Both the boards have already approved it. It's an all-stock deal valued at close to $180 million. Kitsap will keep its branding for some of the areas, not all. And then Kitsap was founded in 1908. It has 17 locations. Heritage was founded in 1927 and is much bigger. So the Heritage is about the 5th largest in Washington, and Kitsap is about the 13th largest in Washington. So not a huge surprise here. This also follows the Home Street Bank merger with Mechanics Bank. So we're seeing some more bank mergers. Part of this, I think, is a more laid-back FTC approving a lot more mergers. So I think we're going to continue to see, personally, I think we're going to see more. But let's talk about banking, because I don't think I said this at the top, but you are on the board of the Seattle Credit Union, right? How did that come to be? How did you, because we talked about the law background, the nonprofit, why banking?
Yeah, well, I've served on nonprofit 501c3 boards for decades. And in the last few years, I've been interested in exploring transitioning those learnings to the for-profit sector. And I can't remember who it was, but someone reached out to me about this opportunity. I met with the CEO. I really liked him and his vision and his approach. And I thought this would be a great learning opportunity. And it really has been.
Yeah. In your opinion, since I have a credit union, Oregon Community Credit Union. What's the biggest difference, do you think, between a standard bank and a credit union?
Yes. Well, you probably know this since you are a member of a credit union, but both are financial institutions offering, in many cases, similar products. But a credit union is owned by its members, and it's actually set up as a cooperative. And the credit unions trace back to Europe in the early 19th century and the idea that people could pool their money and make loans to each other. So they exist not for profit, like a traditional bank, not for charity, but really in service to the members. And so the board of the credit union and the credit union is responsible to the members rather than shareholders. And banks are privately owned or publicly traded and are responsible to the shareholders.
I really feel that, because my whole argument as to why I've stayed with this, because it's not even in Washington. I have to go to like sister stores. It's so much better customer service. I can call somebody and get them on the phone. They live in Eugene, where I grew up. It just feels a lot more personal. Even if, I don't know, somebody could be like, well, you get more points on I don't care. Like, I want somebody that cares about me. And I think that permeates through, don't you think?
Yeah, that's exactly what they're supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
Focusing on the members, yeah.
Yeah. So I think a lot of our listeners haven't been on boards. So take us into the boardroom. What are some of the conversations that you can share? What are the conversations happening in that room?
Well, I think like many other boardrooms, there's a lot of conversations now about how to adapt to the volatile political climate, whether that be actual changes in rules or regulations or resulting changes in consumer behavior because of uncertainty. Also, of course, how to strategically and effectively incorporate AI, which suddenly is here in full force and not everybody's been ready for it. How to combat increased occurrences and more sophisticated methods of fraud and online fraud. And this is not an issue that's specific to the financial industry. This is pervasive across industries. And then I would also say recent case law, I think, has elevated the conversation about standards for board oversight, fiduciary duties, and liabilities. So those are among the
that's a lot.
Super fun and light things we talk about in the boardroom.
Yeah, I wonder if people are not taking their money out or leaving it in more, if you're seeing any kind of trends there with consumer spending.
Yeah, well, I think consumer spending, absolutely. I mean, if you talk to your favorite restaurant, they're all trying to figure out how to gauge what used to be pretty predictable, which isn't anymore of when people come to restaurants, if they come to restaurants. So there's uncertainty around that. But there's also the reality of people losing jobs and they can't pay off their car loans. So there's all these different impacts to try to, and to not know what's necessarily going to happen tomorrow or next week or next month. And then therefore, whatever those decisions are, how they impact our consumers.
Yeah. Last one on this is just, if somebody's trying to get on a board, I know you said you were trying to get on a different type of board. What advice do you have for somebody trying to get on a board? Because I feel like it's just, like you said, you kind of get tapped on the shoulder and you're like, okay, sure.
So for corporate boards, for-profit boards, there's a number of different organizations. There's the NACD, the National Association of Corporate Directors, which if you go to their website, there's lots of resources on how to start learning more about that space. There for women on boards, there's there's Onboarding Women. That is a program that I believe Perkins Coie and Deloitte founded and run. And that's been around I did that program during COVID, which is not the greatest time to be in a cohort when you're like meeting all your cohort people on the screen this big. There is, Phyllis Campbell and I think Deanna Oppenheimer, I believe, put together another, I forget the name off the top of my head, but there's a number of, especially in Seattle, organizations that are trying to create opportunities for people who historically may not have had as much access to serving on for-profit boards to just learn more about it, but also just network and get your name out there.
Yeah, absolutely. I think part of it is, putting yourself in the right rooms. I think you've done such an incredible job with your position at the Kraken I feel like I see you in all the rooms, you're speaking, you really do a good job of putting yourself in the right rooms and positions. Okay, our fourth story, we're finally talking about sports. I know people are like, why haven't we talked about the Kraken? But our fourth story is about the Mariners leaving Root Sports. So I guess I didn't know a lot about this, but the Mariners took ownership of Root Sports in 2023, full ownership. But now they're going to leave it to the MLB, Major League Baseball, starting in 2026. So they're going to do all the coverage. The article was saying how this trend of shifting away from regional sports networks, because it was Root Sports Northwest, since many fans aren't watching on regular cable anymore. And that was kind of what they cited. So let's talk about sports. I want to know, I read this article about how you got this Kraken job. And it sounded like it started as just a meeting that turned into a job offer. Tell us more about that.
Yeah. So when I was the CEO of ArtsFund, as anyone who runs a nonprofit knows, a big part of your job is raising money and meeting with people who might be interested in supporting the nonprofit. So Howard Wright, who, he's very involved in the arts sector and had connections with ArtsFund, he said to me in 2018, you need to meet the CEO of the new hockey team coming to Seattle. And I was like, well, what are you talking about? I had no idea what he was talking about. And he said, you need to go meet with Todd Lewicki. And I thought, okay, fine. I don't know anything about this. And so I reached out to set up a meeting. My assistant reached out to set up a meeting with Todd. And there's a joke, and I won't name names here, but someone who worked for Todd at the time and is now a colleague here knew me and thought I was going to ask for money. So kept canceling the meeting. And it's really funny now because it became this joke at ArtsFund because we're like, he canceled again. And then we had like bets of when do you think he's going to cancel this time? Like an hour or 2 days? But then I met Todd directly at an event. So I kind of circumvented my friend who's trying to prevent me from talking to Todd. And I said, I know you're really, really busy, but if you have even 15 minutes, I would love to just meet with you. And Todd's so gracious. He said, of course. So I got in and we chatted. I did not ask him for money, of course. I mean, the team didn't exist. There was no franchise. It was like a mix of these 4 people. And I just talked about ArtsFund and what I was trying to do there and make it a more inclusive and representative organization, because historically, ArtsFund had only served a certain number of groups that represented a certain segment of our community, and we were trying to expand on that and reflect the changes in our community. And he talked about all the things he had done at the Seahawks and the Tampa Bay Lightning and the NFL, and how he made the decision to come back to Seattle for this because he wanted to do something really powerful for the community. And he wasn't selling me on anything because, we're just chatting. So we had a great conversation. I said, great to meet you. And I figured I would never hear from them again. And then they called me back. Ironically, my friend who was trying to get me not to meet with him had to call me back and say, yeah, we want to have a follow-up call. And okay. And they were chatting and essentially offered me a job.
Wow.
Yeah.
I like that because I think you were both being very genuine in that meeting of just wanting to get to know each other. And then
there was no selling. I mean, I didn't even know, I didn't know hockey. I knew nothing about hockey teams or hockey, so I wasn't trying to,
Yeah. I think that also speaks to you don't have to be an expert in the sport to work for a sports team in that area. Yeah. So speaking of Todd, I do know that part of his mission, as you sort of mentioned, was making hockey more inclusive and accessible. How have you seen this impact the business side of operations? Because I guess what I'm getting at is, is doing the right thing also good for business sometimes, or is it really just doing the right thing and maybe mention some of the ways in which you've made it more inclusive.
I mean, it has to be, right? Like, it's nice to do the right thing, but if the numbers aren't working out, it doesn't fly. So this past July, actually, the Kraken was asked by the league to host the first ever Inclusive Economic Summit at the front end of our club meetings that were held in Seattle in July. And as you can surmise from the title of the summit, the topic is what you're asking about, is how does a focus on inclusion in the workplace with the fan base and the community help the bottom line? And they asked us to host it, frankly, because we're leading in that space. And it's been part of who we are from the very beginning. And so as part of that summit, we held a session for all the club presidents to talk about this topic and how our commitment has been a revenue driver. And so this discussion was led by our chief commercial officer, not by me, interviewing 3 of our corporate members from Alaska Airlines, Symetra, and Muckleshoot Tribe to hear from them about how this focus was a key factor in their decision to partner with us. And if there is going to be a compelling deliverer of that message, it's going to be from your corporate partners. And all of them explained why that was so important to advancing their objectives. And they wouldn't have done it if our commitment wasn't authentic. You can't just suddenly say, oh, you care about this, then we do too. I mean, you have to actually live it. And so the facts are the facts. Demographics are shifting. The spending power is shifting. If we want to compete for market share, we need to be relevant and attractive to the entire market, not just a subset of it. And we also know, you talked about staffing, we know from however many dozens of studies out there that more diverse companies with inclusive cultures outperform. They have stronger bottom lines, less attrition, and higher productivity. So yes, it is the right thing to do, and it's also the necessary thing to do.
Yeah, you brought up corporate sponsorships, which makes a lot more sense because that is a huge chunk of change. I was thinking just butts and seats.
Oh, that too. Yeah. And when, the hat that I gave you, we have the Kraken Common Thread Nights. It used to be called Hockey is for Everyone, where we celebrate different cultures in our region. We commission a local artist to create a culturally inspired Kraken logo, and then we have players sign their jerseys with this logo on it. We auction them off and raise money for both our nonprofit and for a culturally aligned nonprofit. And then we invite community members in and leaders in. And really the whole game is to celebrate and honor and uplift different cultures and to invite people in and make sure they know, everyone is welcome here. It's so much more fun that way and it's better that way. But it's also, like I said, practically speaking, whatever, if you want to get 40% of our population, we need to make sure this is something that everybody feels seen and respected and welcome in.
Yeah, it's good business too. Yeah. Talk to me about, you sort of kind of mentioned the theme nights. And for those that don't know, that's kind of like fan appreciation night or pride night, or I can't even think of the other. Mariners does like dog day or something. Is that under your purview a little bit?
So some of it is. We have a lot of fan nights, so Dog Day would not be under my purview, but the cultural theme nights are. So Hispanic Heritage Night, Black History Night, AANHPI Night, Women Pride, Green Night, and I said Hispanic or Indigenous Peoples Night. And so those are the theme nights where we bring in different artists to highlight their amazing artwork, and then we bring different community members in, and then we support different nonprofits in that process because we have an online auction. So like this year, we're supporting El Centro de la Raza, Rise Above, the Black Future Co-op Fund, the Chinatown International District Business Improvement Association, Bras for Girls, EarthGen, and Seattle Pride. And I feel like I've missed one. But so it's another way to leverage our games and our platforms to support and celebrate. Yeah, absolutely. I feel I can hear a little bit of your arts background coming in to play here of connecting artists. So I think that's very cool. Okay, so one of my pet peeves is when interviewers ask somebody else, like whoever they're interviewing, about somebody else. I hate when they say like, what was it like acting with so-and-so? But Mari, I just have to know, what is it like working with Jessica Campbell? But also I kind of want to talk about, she's obviously made a huge impact, and you don't want to commercialize her being the first woman and kind of make her this puppet too much. And there's probably this fine line to walk. I went to a women's sports bar in a different city, and there was like not a lot of TVs, and it felt like they were using that women's sports bar thing to get more people in. Anyway, not saying that you're doing that. I'm just saying that it's probably something you have to think about, is how to use her impact in the right way. And Jess Campbell isn't the only first for us. I mean, our approach has been different from day one. So we hired not only the first female assistant coach, but the first female pro scout, the first Black play-by-play radio announcer, the first Black TV color analyst, and the first openly Black trainer in the history of the NHL. So I didn't know all that. Yeah, okay. We have a lot of firsts, and we're proud of all of them. And you're right, Jessica's an extraordinary coach, but because she is a first, she then, not that she's asked for it, but is sort of burdened with this additional responsibility or expectation and scrutiny. She's an extraordinary coach, and she's an extraordinary person and leader, and I think an incredible role model. We haven't worked as much with her because she's busy coaching.
Right.
But I know she does speaking when she can to different groups, and I know her. So she also donates and signs the jerseys for our sales, and her jerseys top sellers. Absolutely.
Really?
Oh yeah, she is. She's so, of course, from our nonprofit's perspective, we worship her because she's helping us raise a lot of money. But no, she's really great. But you're right. It's not a really fair, she gets so much scrutiny that she didn't ask for, and she's just trying to do her job. So
yeah.
No, but I'm a huge fan of hers.
She handles it well.
Yes, she does.
Anything else that the audience should expect for this season of the Kraken? Anything to look forward to?
Yeah, well, we're super fan focused, as I hope everybody knows. I mean, that's what sports teams are. We're really focused on our fans. So we spend a lot of time on the off season listening to what our fans have to say and coming up with some cool new offerings. So as you may know, we've significantly reduced prices. We've increased flexibility in our ticketing offering. We've added 25% discounts for food and beverage for all our season ticket members, added some really cool exclusive experiences, and different ways of buying. So you don't have to buy, 44 games, 21 games, different packs that will appeal to different needs of fans at different points in their life. So we are continuing to try to listen and respond.
Great. And I have to plug really quick, I posted on Instagram, but the PWHL, the women's hockey, just announced their schedule as well. So a lot of fun things happening.
Yeah, so great. And we have 2 women's professional teams playing in Climate Pledge Arena, which is unusual, if not unique, I think.
Seattle's a city of firsts, that's for sure.
Is.
Okay, we're going to move on to our last one. This will be pretty quick, but it's an article about the role of the creative industry in Bellevue, and the creative sector contributed 37% to Bellevue's gross regional product, so about $20 billion in economic output. I initially was thinking, what do you mean, like a bunch of painters are doing this? But when you look into it, it's mostly technology-driven artists. So then you think like gaming and animators, and I was like, oh, that makes a lot of sense because Bellevue has a ton of video game headquarters over there. The traditional artist, if you think of like musician, art, painter, that kind of thing, they said about $36,000 a year, and a tech artist makes about $200,000, which no one's surprised. But interesting article, and it kind of talks about how, the Bellevue Arts Museum did close. It's still tough to be in that arts industry. So, Mari, for you, you'd mentioned the President of ArtsFund for 7 years. What was kind of your biggest takeaway from that time? And maybe comment on kind of what do you think needs to change in the industry?
There's a lot of really great things about the art sector. And I think one of the things that I was struck by, and it's not unique to the art sector, I would say it applies to the sports industry as well here in Seattle, is how collaborative it is. That I never got the feeling that one nonprofit arts group was trying to push out another arts group at all. And I think there was a sense that we rise and fall together and we have to do things together. And you've seen that now in some of the mergers, more recent mergers. A while ago, Shakes merged with Wood & O, and then more recently, Seattle Shakespeare merged with Act Theater to become Union Arts just a few months ago. And there's now an alliance with Seattle Theater Group and the Fifth Avenue Theater, which is a win-win-win. So if they didn't have that level of trust and historical cooperation and collaboration, those things never would have happened. So I think that's fantastic. It also resulted in finally 15 or 20 years later, the passage of Doors Open, which existed by many, many other names over the years to get the tax to support over 100 arts organizations in and around.
Oh.
I think it's countywide now. It went from state to county to city. I don't remember exactly, but it finally passed. It was in process the entire time I was at ArtsFund and many years before that, and it finally passed. And that's fantastic and a much needed influx of funding for the sector, but it's not the silver bullet. It's not going to fix everything. And the sector was challenged when I was there, increased expenses, increased costs, and yet corporate funding was pretty static, if not decreasing. Generational interests were changing. So philanthropy has changed of where people are choosing to put their money. And then the public funding is not always reliable. So and then COVID hit, which, exacerbated the challenge. And so groups are certainly coming back from COVID. The influx from Doors Open helps. The influx from the Allen Foundation helps. But it is precarious. And so you said, what would you change or what would you do differently? And having now been out of the sector for 7 years, I don't feel like I'm qualified to speak to it because I don't know exactly what they are doing. But a few years ago, I had dinner with the heads of the opera, the ballet, and act theater at the time. And I was just sharing how different sports are when they talk about fans versus audience members and just what I was learning. And they said it'd be really interesting to have that shared with more people in the arts community. So we did a little town hall at the Nordic Museum, and we had our head of sales, our head of business analytics, and the head of marketing at the Mariners talk about how they approach fans. And I never saw a survey about that, but I heard anecdotally that was really helpful to the arts groups to just hear about different perspectives. There's a lot of apples to apples sorts of things, but hearing at different approaches that they could then think about how they might incorporate some of that. And some actually did implement some new programs based on that. So I would just encourage, like all of us, like think innovatively, think outside the box and outside your industry, because, if you keep trying something over and over again, it's not working, then maybe it's time to try something else.
Yeah, I think that's a good perspective. We had the executive director of the Seattle Opera on, and one thing he was saying is that all these corporations benefit from the lively arts community that we have here. People move to work at these corporations because of the arts, and they enjoy their workday, and they can walk down the street and do all these things. It does benefit these corporations, and so he's wanting more of a reciprocal relationship of, this is good for your business. We are helping you. You're not donating just out of the goodness of your heart. This helps your employees and helps your business at the end of the day. So I thought that was an interesting perspective.
It is. It's not different from the narrative that we had when I was there too. I mean, arts are necessary on many levels, and they do help recruiting. They do help the quality of life. They do help all these things. We did an economic impact study. We did a social impact study, but it didn't really, at least when I was there, move the needle. And so then the question is, why is that? Are we not telling the story in the right way? What is it? So I don't know the answer to that, but it is, it's been a challenge for a while.
Yeah. Interesting. Okay. Well, things to think about, listeners. All right, Mari, we're going to close out the episode with our last question, which is, if somebody's listening and they just don't want to get out of bed and they don't want to go to work, what do you do to get motivated?
I mean, honestly, it's coffee. It's not anything. It's not meditation.
Mari's like, Starbucks, my favorite place to go.
For me, it's my Keurig. Honestly, it's like right there. But,
okay.
Yeah, but I'm an early morning person. My brain is on overdrive by 5:30 for better and for worse. So that's not as much of my problem. But
I do know some people that they're, to get themselves out of bed, they look forward to the ritual of making their coffee, and you sit at home and drink your coffee before starting your day.
Yeah, briefly. But also, I mean, this sounds, I don't know, kind of cliche, but I like my job. So that helps.
Yeah, certainly helps. Yeah.
I don't dread Monday.
Perfect. Well, I'm so glad you're in this position. Seattle's so lucky to have you. Seattle Kraken's lucky to have you. And I really appreciate you taking the time to sit down with me. And I'm so cool to sit here at the practice facility. So thanks again.
Thank you.
This has been The Weekly, with production assistance from Nick Patry. If you liked what you heard, rate us and write a review on Apple Podcast or Spotify. We love listener feedback, so if you have any story suggestions, comments, or complaints, email us at info@theweeklyseattle.com. Make sure to check back next Sunday for the latest local business news. We'll see you next time.